But now to shift gears here and focus a bit more on what to watch if you're a first-time buyer. Right now, some trends we're seeing among these younger generations. For that, we'd like to welcome in Annie Cole, the author and founder of Money Essentials for Women. So Annie, thank you so much for being here with us today. This is a great topical conversation, especially we're just talking on rates and tariffs and pricing concerns. So all that to be said, I mean, walk us through some of your really first-time buyer tips and what you say to those that are right now looking to be in the buyer and renter market.
Absolutely. So I think right now, the hardest thing for everyone is, of course, getting that down payment, right? Saving up enough money for a down payment is a very, very hard thing to do. So I think what most people want to think about right now is how to actually make that happen. And the best thing to do is to break it down into chunks. I know that sometimes saving up that big down payment seems like a huge amount. So the more you can figure out the total amount that you need to have to make that down payment, and then work backwards to say, this is the amount I can actually set aside on a monthly basis. This is how long it will take me to reach that total amount. And I think the more we can encourage young people to just break it down into reasonable chunks, the more confident they will feel. And then, of course, when it comes to building up that down payment, we have two levers we can pull. You can either be bringing in more income to build up the down payment faster, or you can be thinking about reducing your spending through your budgeting to have more money that you can put towards the down payment. So focusing on either of those things are going to be really important and helpful as you just make that huge commitment to creating that down payment for your home.
Annie, I was taking a look at your notes. You say you should set aside 28% or use 28% as a guideline. Don't let your housing costs exceed 28% of your gross monthly income. So I think that's kind of an interesting number there. I guess I've heard 50, 30, 20, 28% was the new time for me. So talk to me about kind of the thought behind that. And also as it relates to the down payment here in the New York City area, it's at least 20% for a down payment. Is that kind of the same thing all over the country? You need at least 20%?
Yeah. So, if we think about the down payment first, it really depends on the type of loan that you're getting. So it's not a hard and fast rule that you have to have 20% for your down payment. It depends on the type of loan you have. So I would encourage you to set up an appointment with a mortgage broker to actually figure out what you qualify for and the different loans available. Because depending, for example, if you have a VA loan, you may qualify for a 0% down payment all the way up to that 20% down payment. So it really depends on what you qualify for. And then to your other question, I think that, do you mind asking that one more time, actually, just to make sure that I get it right?
No, the 28%, I'm just curious about the thought process behind that, or dig into that a little bit more.
Yep. So, general rule of thumb, 28 to 30% is really where you're going to be able to afford your housing and make sure that you're not overspending and potentially put yourself in a hard position to reach your other financial goals. So, for example, a lot of times folks are saying we need to set aside 15% towards our retirement goals. So if we think about our car payment, our housing, our groceries, our retirement, if you add all of that up, bringing 30% towards your housing is usually going to keep you stable and being able to put money towards everything else. So if you move beyond that and you start putting 50%, 60% towards your housing, you're going to find that your other goals might fall behind because you can't portion out your money in the way that you would need to.
Okay, so also going off your notes here in this micro retirement theme amongst these younger generations, talk to me about this because I saw that and the rise of this micro retirement, and that definitely piqued my interest.
Yes, I actually love this trend. So micro retirement is this idea of taking a mini break from work, and it's called micro retirement. Some people are calling it a sabbatical or some other break from work. But basically, it's this really popular trend with the young generation right now to focus on self-care and to take care of themselves. So the goal is to take a break from work, to get out of that burnout cycle and to actually replenish yourself. But there's a lot of pros and cons that folks should be thinking about. So on the pro side, we are seeing people actually taking care of themselves, leaning into self-care. But on the con side, we want to make sure that you're not just quitting your job cold turkey, potentially leaving a big gap in your resume, or just leaving yourself not moving towards your financial goals or depleting your savings account. So if you're thinking about taking a break from work, the best way to do it is, number one, to be very intentional, have a goal, and decide what you want to get out of that break. Number two, think about how to do it with the benefits you already have. So potentially using your PTO more often to take these breaks. Or number three, if you have the money to actually take an extended break, you can plan out a 1 month, 6 month, 1 year break and really be intentional about getting that recovery, spending time doing something you love, and then returning to the workforce. So Yeah, it's a fascinating trend. I'm just really excited to see people leveraging all of these different ways to recuperate and take care of themselves.
Yeah, but it's interesting because I saw the notes here and I'm like, okay, I want to know how to afford this micro retirement, and of course without derailing your financial future. But one of your tips for affording to be able, affording a home was to either get a second income or get more income or save more. So can you do both? How does that play into saving for a house and micro retiring and focusing on self-care here?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the number one thing that I actually advise anyone to do is to come up with a financial plan that clearly outlines what your goals are. Because I think one thing that a lot of folks don't think about is that your life is not going to be the same financially month after month, year after year. You may, for example, decide that you are going to really focus on taking care of yourself, and maybe you give yourself a 1 month break between jobs. You're applying for jobs, you get another job, and you decide, I'm going to take a 30-day break to give myself that micro retirement in between. And then you say, once I've gotten that break over the next 6 to 12 months, I'm going to start front loading my saving for my home. I'm going to really focus on that. And then over the next 3 years, I know that if I set aside X amount every single month, I'm going to be able to reach my down payment amount. So I think the more that people can actually run the calculations and get super, super clear about what it would take to get there, you can start combining all kinds of goals. You can be paying off debt, you can be taking breaks. You really can do it all, but you need to be able to weigh the pros and cons of what you're going to do and in what order, on what timeline, all of those different pieces.
Yeah, and I think such a good conversation, especially I think there's such an importance right now in like reinvesting in yourself, not just, giving yourself entirely to your career. And I support that. I love that the younger generation is so much a vocal mouthpiece for that movement. So really great insight. And I think such an important discussion, especially right now with things somewhat feeling like they're in disarray in the overall economy. So we so appreciate it, Annie Cole, for joining us. Of course, the author and founder of Money Essentials for Women.